and make sure. Jared, you got me loud and clear, hopefully, because I just did 5 minutes of announcements. Hopefully everyone heard that. I don't have to start over.
Dude, I got you, brother. How you doing?
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I'm not in the studio today, but we're on the road. I'm doing at a conference, so I appreciate you getting on. And one thing is, one thing we realized this last year is you have to be mobile, be willing to change, but not just change for the sake of change, right? If that makes sense. Like, I think sometimes people just abandon what's worked just for the sake of abandoning it. And I like what you've done is you've really figured out how to implement, how to use, what we're using in the telesales world, and really put like some specific systems and structures in place. Cause I think that's why it failed at first, right? We were like, we know how to write, 30, 40, 50 apps a week as an infield agent, or a month as an infield agent. Like, we had a structure, a formula, system to it. And then a lot of people hadn't done, virtual and telesales. And you started doing it at a really high level. So I'd love for you to, talk about, how, if you're someone right now who's either a new agent or running in the field, how do you use telesales? You do it full-time, part-time, whatever you recommend. Then we're going to jump into some specific questions, and then, kind of why you started doing it, and then how you implement it into what you were already doing. And then we'll roll from there, bro. But thank you for getting on. And for those you don't know, Jared's one of the best trainers in the company, had a tremendous amount of sales experience other places, and has absolutely crushed it here. So thank you for being on the team, valuable member of our team, bro, and appreciate everything you do for us.
I appreciate you, brother. That's a heck of an introduction. So hopefully I can give some value to you guys. So the first thing I think is super, super important is the backstory of why I started to even attempt to do call to close and virtual sales. Because realistically, had it not been for this incident, I probably would have never done it, because I'm a big fan of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And, I was doing really, really well in the home. I've been very comfortable in the home. And I've just kind of adopted this mentality of like, in the home works for me, and I'm not going to change that. But at the end of July, my wife and I took a little trip to Cozumel, and we were riding those little like motorcycle scooters, and one of the back tires exploded, and it just sent us flying. We were going like 60 miles an hour. So we got pretty banged up pretty severely, and we took my wife Courtney to the hospital. Luckily, we were both okay, but we were both really banged up. And then when we got back to the States, man, it got to the point where I just couldn't even walk. Like, it got to the point I had a crush injury to my hamstrings. I had a hematoma on my leg and just major, major road rash. And so I was like, okay, I definitely need to get back to work, because I just took a vacation, which, was longer than we had expected because of the injuries. And I also knew that it'd be difficult to me to do the drive and do the travel with these literally open wounds that I had on my leg and arms and back. And also, my wife still needs help as well. So I just kind of found myself in a position where I was like, okay, I got to get this done. I need to be adaptable. I need to be able to, bring the same value in the home over the phone. There's people doing it. Why not me? And luckily I had a ton of leads come in during that little trip to Mexico. And so when I got started, actually the first actual day back was August 16th. And I just said, okay, my wife's good enough to fend for herself, and I'm healthy enough to rip this thing and try to get it started. And the big reason, like I said, is, just injuries and just being able to take care of her and be close to her. But I also had leads coming in all over the place. I had leads coming in Alaska, Texas, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, like Utah. I live in Utah. So having to travel and go literally across the country was something that I just knew I couldn't do right then and there. But I wanted to make some sales and, kind of make up for the time that we took off. And so that's what kind of got me into trying virtual stuff out. And so, not to say that I'm an expert. I mean, looking back at the calendar, I've had, at this point, 13 days where I've, picked up the phone and tried to do everything call to close. But and these 13 days, I've learned a ton. So I hope I'm able to share a little bit what I've learned with you. With the numbers, I've done, past these 13 days, I've done $29,846, 100% call to close. So no appointments. There's people out there that I would love to jump on a call with and learn from as well, that have, way more impressive numbers. But for me, somebody who has never done anything over the phone, I like that I was able to kind of have this type of success.
Yeah. Well, dude, that's why I wanted to have you on too, is because it's so fresh, right? It's like you're just learning it. And I think that's the best time to have people on, like people that have, it's like you've already built a business. Like, I don't know, like you already there, but you're like in the middle of figuring out right now, So the
That
first thing I
middle.
wanted you to go over for everyone is what are the daily, minimums you give yourself that are similar to what they would be for in-home sales? Like you're doing call to close, like how many dials you looking to do every day, how many presentations, and how many apps do you looking to take every day where you're committing to doing one call closes?
I think you really just have to be flexible and be willing to work a full schedule versus like, hey, I'm going to do 10 appointments today, or I'm going to get a hold of this many people. Cause really you never know. I mean, I've had days where I've gotten a hold of a good amount of people and I've been able to do 5, 6, 7, 8, presentations in the day. And there's been days where like, for whatever reason, I only get 2. So, and I have to book the others out. So I think the first thing, as far as like a guideline of what you should look for daily is consistency, organization, and you have to, be religious about your schedule. Don't allow, just because you can do things over the phone now, don't, think that, oh, I can just do it whenever. I can just actually, put, a new activity in that I wasn't doing before in the home, like, XYZ, and I can just dial or just do call to close like this time to this time. No, like it's going to be the same. If you want the same results, you're going to have to put in the similar or even more effort, especially if it's new. So I would say if you were dialing before at 7:30 a.m., start at 7:30 a.m. or 8 a.m., whatever you started with. And then you really just don't stop until the job's done. So for me personally, Zach, what I did is I had my stack of leads in all the different states, and I had separated by lead type, whether it's mortgage protection, final expense, or internet lead. And I would literally sit here and work every single lead, usually 3 times every single day. So I had a big stack of fresh mail that came in and a bunch of internet leads as well that I purchased. And every single day I was just working the heck out of all of those. So I mean, that's over 100 leads that I would rip through, and I'm going, 3 rounds, 3 times each, 3 calls each through every single lead. So the biggest thing I would say is, just because it's a little bit different approach, don't think that you can change the timing and schedule of things. If you're working at 8 and you're used to dialing 8 or 7:30, do that, and literally just don't stop until the daylight runs out. Luckily, over the phone, you can start earlier by working a different coast and then end later. So you have more time in your day, but there's no advantage to that if you don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, can you break down real quick, like what are the types of leads you're using for this? And then give everyone some stats for what you've seen for success, as far as like how many dials it takes for you to make a presentation and presentations to make a sale, depending on the different lead types you're using.
So when I first started, that first week and a half, it was the 100% mortgage protection mailers and final expense mailers. So those were, mostly new mailers that had been coming in, and also trying to polish off, any remaining mailers that I had. And so the first week was pretty much all mail. And then as far as how many appointments, I would say it pretty much took me, I would say 3 or 4 presentations to submit an application on average. That first day doing telesales call to close, I was able to submit 4 applications. And I probably presented to about 8 people. So I would say 50% call to close ratio. The second day, same, I submitted 4 policies again. The next day was 2, the next day I did 4. And then on average, I'm submitting, 3 to 4 applications each day. And as far as activity, I mean, man, like I said, I'm starting at least 8 a.m. And, on most of these days, on some of these days, I'm working till 9, 10 p.m. or more. I did an application that first week at like 11 p.m. It's just when the client could get to their emails and sign all the documents. And then some days were shorter, of course, just doing trainings and doing some hiring stuff with some agents. But, especially starting out, I had full expectations like, okay, this is going to take literally all my time. This is literally going to take all my time, and I'm going to have to work the heck out of all my leads. And so, if it's something that you're considering doing, good, you got to go in with it with the right mindset. Like, this is not going to be easy. Matter of fact, it's going to be even more difficult. And there's a bunch of things to learn as far as a learning curve, and I'm going through that right now. But the biggest advice is don't change what you've been doing to have success.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what does your lead flow look like now? Or what does a good lead flow look like for this? And you obviously you've written, you said 26 apps in the last 13 days doing this, right? So you're on pace to do 60 a month all over the telesales. So, what's your lead flow look like now? And what does your lead spend look like per week to get that kind of result you're having?
Yeah, so good question. So yeah, those 13 days I submitted 31 applications total. And then primarily, the past 2 weeks it's been all direct mail. And so all direct mail and just following up with old mail that I had. So
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
was
say, someone asked, is that new mail? Is it old mail? Is it a mixture of everything, or is it
it's
CRM
been
leads?
a complete mixture of new mail that resent just buy per lead and just older buy per lead mail that I had like 6 months ago or 9 months ago or even last year. So just ripping through all of those is really kind of what I saw the big success from. And then just recently, I signed up for Smart Financial and I've been trying to, live transfers, which is nuts, which is really, really cool, really interesting, very different dynamic, very different conversations you have. I've only been able to have 4 live transfers so far, and I've closed 2 of them. So 50% close ratio on the live transfers. But I think, realistically, Zach, you are gonna have to, if you're trying to master call to close or virtual sales, you're gonna have to do everything a little bit, and you're gonna probably have to suck at everything just a little bit. I would say, do what you're used to as far as lead type. If you've had success with internet leads 1, 2, 3 month or aged or new or whatever it was, do that. Get profitable first. Write some business over the phone and with a lead type that you're comfortable with. And then, doing this over the phone, what I've learned from other people that's been doing a lot longer than being a lot more successful is you have to diversify. So if you haven't been doing internet leads before, it's time to start implementing that. Whether it's 1 day a week or you set aside a few hours a day to just rip internet leads or, live transfers. Because I think realistically, what you want to have is, 3 or 4 different systems going, whether it's, hey, throughout the day, I'm going to have my live transfers on, 30 plus states, I recommend. And then I'm also going to be dialing my final expense, mortgage protection, and then also probably have phone burner rip in my internet leads. And then I think eventually you can probably specialize and say, hey, for me, I like this the most. But I really think that you, in the beginnings, stick with what you've been successful with, but also you have to just get, a big just lump of everything at once. So, it's going to be uncomfortable because you're going to have to work lead types you're probably not used to.
What's your lead spend been like? Do you know how much you're spending per day or per week or per month or whatever now that you're doing all virtual sales? Is it still about the same as it was before?
I would say this at least the same as before. So, minimum $1,000 a week to $2,000 a week. I think if you're going to implement live transfers, you're probably going to have to spend even more than that, especially depending on what percentage of your appointments are going to come from live transfers. Because man, if you set your bid at $65 for a live transfer, you might only get a couple calls depending on how many states you have. So you're probably gonna have to increase that to 75, 80 to be able to get the volume you want. But you still want to be able to do all your internet leads and mortgage protection stuff. So I would say, your spend realistically, if you're going to decrease your spend, what you've had in the past, like huge mistake. Do that, but also understand that you're going to have to search other avenues as well, because the mail you're going to probably rip through pretty fast, especially if you don't have a big library. Like I have, I've got binders full of mailers, behind me. So I've got inventory to be able to call on. And I'm not just, not just dialing like a stack of 10, 15, 20, or even 100 leads in a day. Like I have thousands of leads in a day that I have access to that I can go back in my library and just rip older stuff. Because the key is activity.
Yeah.
You got to get people on the line.
And a lot of the leads are dialing at this point are a year or two old, right? Which you can go get those same leads in the CRM. People can, right? You can go buy the age mortgage mailers and buy age final expense mailers. And that's basically what you're dialing because you've had those leads for that amount of time, right?
100%.
Jared, let's go through this. This is what everyone wants to really know. So I guess 2-part question. A, do you do any Zoom or FaceTime or anything, or is it only one call closes over the phone?
I've only done one call close over the phone, but I think Zoom gives you a little bit more credibility, but I've only done just one call close.
Okay, cool. So next week we'll have someone on to go over Zoom stuff, but for the one call close world, like take us through, what does a phone call look like? How do you go straight from a phone call into an appointment? And then walk us through, from you call the lead to, what your appointment looks like, and then anything you do differently than you would as an in-home appointment.
Okay. So as far as the script goes, if I'm calling, like, let's say mortgage protection, ring, ring, Bob. Hey, Bob, this is Jared, Mortgage Protection Office. I'm just getting back to you about the request form Mary filled out by hand and mailed in for information on the mortgage protection program. Does that ring a bell? Yep. Awesome, Bob. Well, hey, is Mary there with you now? I make sure to try to get both spouses together. And then if I can get them both together, I'll say, great, Bob. Listen, my job is super simple. When these forms come in, I'm a licensed national broker, so I have nothing to sell you. I simply just place you with whatever carrier is going to give you the most amount of coverage for the least possible monthly premium. And that kind of just drops your guard down, because at the end of the day, they requested information. So I'm here to give them information. So I really want to just drop the guard down of like, oh, this guy's going to try to sell me something. And then I say, simply put, most people looking to make sure that they pass away, they get the house paid off. Is that what you guys were looking for? And I really try to just build their why. What was going through their mind when and it really kind of the same thing in the home. So, what was going through your mind when you filled this out? What was your biggest concern? What were you looking to take care of? Whatever they say, I repeat it right back to them exactly how they phrased it, to make sure that we're both on the same page. I say, perfect, Bob, that's exactly what we're going to do today. Go ahead and grab a pen and paper. And they grab that, and I make sure to give them my state license number and my name. And then I also make sure to send them a picture of my state license. And if you skip the send a picture part, you're going to find that you're not really building as solid of credibility as you could have. So make them write it down and text them or email them over a picture of that. And then, you just go through.
Hey, Jared, if you go back a little bit and they go, my wife's not here right now, what do you do to set a follow-up appointment? And then, how likely are they to show up to that appointment? And do you do anything extra to make sure they're going to be there if the wife's not home and you need to, or they're driving to work or something, and you have to set a follow-up?
Yeah. So if they're not, able to write things down, or they're not, available in that moment, then I'd rather just schedule an appointment. That being said, even if they're driving, I just say, hey, do you have me on the hands free? Can you pull over? This takes only about 10 minutes to go through. I will try. This is just personal. I will try to get as far as I can, whether it's getting through the why, getting through underwriting, I'll try to get as far as I can, and to kind of build a little bit more value with the client before I just let them off the phone and just book an appointment. And then obviously, they're going to tell you, yes, I remember doing that, or, hey, no, that was all my wife. Like, you got to talk to her. In that case, I would just call the wife and book an appointment with the wife. So it really just depends on every single person and what they say when they pick up the phone. But I would say, personally for me, I want to give as much value and have them understand that, hey, I'm on your team. This is my job. I'm going to do this for you. And this is exactly how this is going to look and how this is going to go. So I want them to have an exact idea of what exactly I'm going to do. We're going to go through, questions based on how you answer the questions. I'm going to place you with a carrier that's going to give us the most amount of coverage for the least possible monthly premium. Once we find something that makes sense for you, and most importantly, fits your budget, they don't let me approve anybody because I'd approve everyone. So we just have to submit the request for coverage to the carrier we like the most to see if we can get it approved. Then they're going to mail you a policy. It'll show up in about 5 to 7 days. We got a free look window, yada yada yada. So I definitely want to make sure that they understand the process and the point and what this is going to look like, whether I do it on a one call close or if I have to book an appointment for later that evening. Because what I found is if you're booking an appointment for the next day or the day after for a call, tough. I really haven't I've booked a lot of those appointments, but very rarely do they actually go through on that time of day that I book it.
Absolutely. And so then you jump into the presentation. I guess, are there any major tips other than you said you send a picture of your of your state license? Do you send your ID or a picture of you at all, or just the license?
I just send the license. I haven't sent anything other than that, but I think that would be a really good idea. At the end of the day, you just want to come off as a professional that can help them. So if you have a picture that's professional and clean and you have a good way to do it, whether it's a driver's license or like a little pamphlet about you and what you do. As long as it's professional and clean, then it's going to help you.
Perfect. So then going through the rest of the in-home and everything, is there anything else you do differently than you would, in the home? Do you, let them know up front you're going to need, important information like their bank account, social stuff like that, so it doesn't come up at the end? Or like, what are a couple of differentiators you can tell that are different from your phone appointments as opposed to in-home appointments?
So I do try to ask a few what's called like power questions in the intro. I make sure they're present and they're not distracted. If they're distracted, like I said, we'll book it for another time. But I make sure they're sitting down, they have something to write with. And then I ask something like, hey, am I the first person you've talked to about this? How long have you been looking to set this up? Or have you ever had this kind of coverage in the past? And so I will definitely try to get out of them some of those questions so that I know already off the bat, like what direction I'm going to go to. Hey, have you ever had life insurance before? Have you ever had any mortgage protection before? Have you ever been declined for insurance before? So I'm going to get those big power questions out the way from the beginning. Hey, are you working full-time or retired? If they're retired, okay, are they depositing your SSI into your bank, or you just get that on Direct Express? I get that on my bank. Perfect. I know they have a bank account, right? And so I do definitely try to ask those questions, and kind of after I explain what I'm going to do as the underwriter, look at the options. 100% of the time, I will tell them, we're going to submit a request for coverage to see if we can get you approved, because I can't approve you. I wish I could, but we can't. So we're going to have to submit the application, which is going to require a bunch of sensitive information. That's why the state requires me to give you my license. So we're going to have to go over your social, your banking information as well to submit the application. Do you have any problems with that? Do you have any issues with that? And normally they'll say no, right? I mean, in my experience, surprisingly, I guess, I haven't really had any pushback. The times that I haven't said that I haven't kind of shadowed, hey, Bob, we're going to need XYZ. When I skip that, man, it's like it's almost like 50-50 at the end. They're like, well, I don't want to give you that. Why can't we just see if we get approved first? So even if you feel very comfortable and confident that the client's going to be able to move along with you in the sales process and give you that information, I'd recommend that you still say it first. Get ahead of it. Get in front of that. Bob, if we find something today, it is going to require us to submit the application, which is going to, include personal information as well as your social security number, banking information, routing, and account number. As long as we find something that makes sense for you, is there going to be any issue with any of that? No issue. As long as we can find something that makes sense. So that way, when you get to that point, oh, dude, he's already told me that we're going to need this, and I already told him we will. And if
people don't like to be surprised, right? I mean, that's the big. People they want to feel like they trust you. And that's the same thing in home. When I skip that in the in-home, they get to the end, they'd be, I thought you were just delivering information. Like, if you don't set good expectations, so it's the exact same thing as on the phone. You just have to act as if and be as presumptive as you are in the home, right? That's basically what it boils down to.
It really is the exact same thing, surprisingly, but you can't forget those important steps, because you don't have the same credibility as you do in person. You really do lose some of the advantages.
Now, what about to wrap up the sale? Because there's gonna be if they answered your phone call, they're gonna answer other people's phone calls. So what are you doing to make sure that they're not taking out more insurance over and over again?
So the first thing I do is I really hammer down on, hey, I'm a broker, so I'm going to be able to pull up all of the different carrier options that you qualify for, and we're going to go with the carrier that's going to give us the most amount of coverage for the least possible monthly premium. So when I get to the quoting part of it, I'll just rattle off some of the quotes, and I'm using, like insurance toolkits, or, I'm able to pull up the quotes quick. So I'll tell them, hey, this is Americo. After that, you've got, X company, XYZ, and I'll tell them the numbers. So I'll say, Bob, obviously we want to make sure that we get the best coverage for you and Mary. So that's why we're going to go with Americo. Or, hey, Americo is the only carrier that's going to give us a 30-year option. Everyone else is only going to be a 20. So I definitely try to make them have them understand, like, hey, this is why we're going with this company, and here are the features of the policy. Day one coverage. The policy has living benefits. A-rated carrier. They've been in business for X, however long. So I really try to do a good job of like educating why we have this carrier and why we have this death benefit, and why we have these living benefits on whatever solution we're going with. And then at the end of it, I just make sure that they save my number. I make sure to send them an email. I know some of my other agents are actually sending them like a letter in the mail, which is really cool. I think it has a lot of benefits. I mean, how cool is it to get something actually physically from somebody to talk to? But I think you have to have a second point of contact after the conversation. I think however you do that, that's the key. Finish the conversation, help the client, and have them feel good about you and what you've done, recap everything. And then either the next day or the next week, give them a call back, send them a text, send them an email, whatever that looks like, but just have a second point of contact. That way they know, hey, this Jared guy actually does care about me. That goes a long, long, long way, especially when they answer the phone and say, hey, Jared, how's it going? They save my number, right? If I call them the next week or next day and they say, hey, who's this? This is Jared. I helped you with your policy yesterday. Like, I know they didn't save my number, so I need to build more credibility in the second phone call. So that's something huge that I think, we kind of forget and fall behind on is, hey, I'm your guy. Like, I'm not just here for you that day I wrote the policy. I'm going to call you up, make sure you got the policy. Does any change we need to make? And also on a second phone call, ask for referrals. Bob, I know you mentioned Mary is not working right now, or is she working, Bob, or whatever the case was. I have some options here for her as well. If she's there, go ahead and grab a pen and paper, and boom, you just bought yourself another appointment on a free lead. So that's where it comes into play is like, dude, you got to be organized. It doesn't have to look like a library like this, but when you get a lead and they tell you who the beneficiaries are and they tell you why they're buying the coverage and they tell you their dog's name or whatever the case is, like, dude, you got to write all that stuff down. So that way, when you call them back again, you can be like, yeah, how's Toby the dog or something like that, right? And so I think people buy based on emotions, and I think people will definitely stay with you if they feel like they're valued, and if you can remember and retain some of the gold that they're just dropping on you on the first phone call, and just take a note of it and maybe save their contact info with that little thing, whatever it is, whether it's the dog's name, beneficiary name, or if they like sports. So whatever it is, but I do definitely like to make a little note of how I can remember this person and something to bring up in our next phone call. So I want them to associate that good feeling and relevance and value with me.
Oh, absolutely, dude. Well, hey, Jared, this is a home run. I try to keep it as close to 12:30 as possible to respect everyone's time, but thank you for getting on, dude. Thank you for all the value you provided. We'll definitely get the recording out to everyone and watch it over and over and over again, because you can help 30 families in 13 days like Jared did too. So it makes me want to get back in the field and do what you're doing, bro. So thank you, and I appreciate everything you do for the team, man.
You're welcome, Zach. Thanks so much, guys.
See you guys.